Podcasts are gaining popularity these days, and some of us cannot imagine our lives without listening to a podcast on the way to work or playing it in the background when doing chores. Today, more than 100 million people listen to podcasts in the US alone, and listeners tip about $300 a month to their favorite podcasters. Podcasts are a great way to learn new things or keep yourself entertained. For some, it's not enough to listen to podcasts. They host their shows and want to attract as many listeners as possible. For those who listen to and host podcasts, there are plenty of apps and tools that make this interaction easier for everyone. Which service does choose, however? If you want to launch your podcast or discover some new shows to listen to, you need to find an okay podcast hosting. Since there are a plethora of these, it's rather challenging to choose the best one. What is a podcast hosting? Podcast hosting offers you file hosting and an RSS feed for your podcast. Podcast hostings upload your audio files on their servers. When a user subscribes to your show, the podcast hostings send your audio and multimedia files directly to the platform which plays the podcast. This service needs a lot of space to store all these files and let users download them. A podcast is hosting a web server that lets you upload your files and an RSS feed describing the files. Some professional podcast hostings offer a lot more than this, such as analytical insights on your listeners, marketing solutions for audience growth, ability to share your podcasts on social media, 24/7 support, live streaming, free podcast hosting. Notwithstanding that most professional or semi-professional podcast hostings charge money, there are still free or at least not such pricey options you can try out. Many free plans are merely standard price plans with limited functionality. If you start your podcast, such hostings are an excellent opportunity to get to know these services. So here are some podcast tools you can use to listen and even create your shows. Podhunt. Podhunt is a web service for the discovery of new podcasts. Every day, users vote for episodes and get the best daily shows. On Podhunt, you can listen to podcasts and submit your episodes alike. SoundCloud. Technically, SoundCloud is not a podcast host, but it always comes to mind when talking about podcast hostings. Yet, you're able to store your podcasts here and listen to podcasts of other creators. Tip: you can download podcasts, audiobooks, playlists, and just songs from SoundCloud with MP3 Studio. Moon FM. Moon FM is a desktop podcast player for iOS and Android. It's also accessible for macOS, Windows, and Linux. But you can't upload there your podcasts. This tool is just for listeners. Mic Drop. Mic Drop is an easy-to-use and user-friendly podcast hosting integrated with Dropbox. To start podcasting, you only need to have a Dropbox account, create a Dropbox folder for your show, save your audio files there and sync it with Mic Drop. You can integrate your podcast feed with Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more services to let more people find your show. Podcast Gang. This is a community with recommendations and podcast compilations. Podcast Gang lets you not just listen to various shows but also submit your podcasts on the platform. Podcast selections are divided into several categories according to their topic and publisher. Podcasts by Rate Fox. This service is an alternative to the previous one, but apart from podcasts alone, it also has movies, TV shows, games, books, and reviews. With Rate Fox, you can listen to podcasts on the web and download a mobile app for iOS and Android. Magellan. Magellan is a player that also has podcasts, audiobooks, documentaries, news reports, and radio recordings. IndieCast. IndieCast is a platform that lets you discover independent podcasts. There you can find brand new music, playlists and shows. It has a web player and mobile apps for iPhone and Android devices. Spotify. Spotify is a music streaming platform that everyone has heard of. Despite the massive competition with Apple Music and Google Play Music, Spotify is probably the leading platform of this kind. You can enjoy millions of tracks online or offline on any of your devices. Spotify has a web player, a desktop app for Windows, macOS, and Linux, the mobile app available on iOS, Android, and Windows Phone, and even compatibility with TVs, set-top boxes, smartwatches, and home video gaming consoles. Apple Podcasts webpage, iOS app, and a desktop app are those platforms you can enjoy your favorite shows on or discover new podcasts. You can find entertaining, educational, and inspirational stories on different topics, from business and marketing to sport and news on Apple Podcasts. Buzzsprout is one of the best podcast hostings for beginners. This is an easy-to-use service that enables you to create content without anything disturbing you. The service is also free for new users. You get a free plan that lets you upload 2 hours of content and stores your files for 90 days. You can embed your podcast on your website or blog and see your performance insights. This tool is just for creators. You can't find or listen to podcasts there. Did you know that if you want to convert a YouTube video into MP3 and listen to it as a podcast, you can use MP3 Studio tool and easily do so?